Hello everyone, Rand here. Today we'll be building the first of our low-end PCs here. This one here is the lowest of the low, as I called it. If you watched the kind of the introductory video to this series here, we kind of started out picking out some components here. So again, this is the lowest one here. Again, AMD system. Got low-end graphics card, so an AMD R7 240. Again, don't expect 60 frames per second on this card, most likely not any high detail, but it should get the job done. And all of this for $300. So our goal with this, at least this system here, was to aim for, or maybe even lower than the price of a console. Because one thing we hear a lot of is, well, consoles are cheaper, PCs are more expensive. Not maybe necessarily true, as hopefully you'll see with this system. So before we get started building here, first got to give a big thanks to all the individuals that made this possible. Those that donated through the live streams, super chats. Also a couple of individuals that donated directly to this project. Big thanks to those individuals as well for making this all possible here. Like I said, this is the first of what will hopefully be 3 systems. Okay, let's get started here with the components we have. First off, we got a case here. This is just a Rosewill case, just a smaller one, nothing particularly fancy here. We got, of course, the main component here, a motherboard. This is a Gigabyte. I'm not even entirely sure what motherboard this one is. Actually, it says a GA78 LMT motherboard. So a Gigabyte GA78 LMT. We got 4 gigs of RAM, not very much. But for probably a little bit more money, we can probably put 8 gigs in this. Or actually, you could probably put more because it's got 4 slots there. So you could put, I'm assuming, probably a max of 16 in this system. This is DDR3, I do believe. So we'll see once we might be able to bump this up yet. We got an AMD FX CPU, 4 cores. Not exactly the highest of end CPUs here, but again, when it comes to gaming, your CPU isn't the most critical. It is important to have a good one, because otherwise you're going to have problems. And then, of course, we got, again, the AMD Radeon R7 240 graphics card here. Again, just a lower end graphics card. And then for our power supply, we got a Corsair 500-watt power supply. So that actually is a pretty good power supply there. That was a refurbed power supply, so shouldn't be anything wrong with that. Again, you could probably go, and I think I showed this in my introductory video there, you can get cheaper power supplies, but you might be a little bit questionable. Corsair here, this should be a good one. Okay, so moving right on to the install here. Of course, one of the tools we're going to be needing is your hammer. I was asked, last time I built a PC, how do you incorporate a hammer into this? Well, I'm going to show you. So again, we got our hammer here. We won't be needing that just yet though, because everything we're about to do here is toolless. So let's start by putting the CPU in. Typically there's some sort of latch system. It varies on the system you have. So in this case, this is an AMD AM3 socket, I do believe. And typically with most CPUs, they'll have them marked up in the top corner. Hopefully you can see the little triangle there as to what corner it goes where. There's a little triangle marked on the socket, so we're just going to drop that in. Don't want to force it, just kind of let it fall in. One of the big differences here between AMD and Intel, AMD has the pins on the CPU. Intel has the pins on the socket. So big difference there. Well, not really in the sense of how it works, but just a slight difference there. Okay, RAM, again, we're just going to put that in the first slot there. Push it down till those lock in. You'll kind of hear them snap up and hold the RAM in place. That does it for the motherboard. Shouldn't be anything else we have to do here. Now what we're going to do is get the motherboard lined up in the case. We'll have to probably, well, actually I see some standoffs already pre-installed, so I just have to make sure they're in the right spots. Okay, so we got our case open up here. What I always like to do first, there are 6 standoffs pre-installed here. I like to just take the motherboard and we're going to set it down in there as carefully as possible here. And figure out where our standoffs are and where they have to be. So, we got one there installed, one there is installed, there. We got one there. We got one there. And we have one here. So that is, what, 6 of them? But if you notice, we got 2 more here and here that do not have standoffs on them. So we're going to have to get standoffs installed in them. Just take that back off, set that off to the side there. And one thing I noticed with this computer case here, this is the bag of hardware that was included here. There's no extra standoffs. I don't know if I'm just missing it or they're not generally included, because there's holes here for them, but they don't have any. So went rummaging through my collection here, found 2 more standoffs here, so we should be good. We'll get those installed. Hopefully these are the right ones and they'll install. Just a little tool here for putting them in. You know, if you don't have a little tool, usually you can put them in by hand and just, you know, use a little pliers just to tighten them up. Okay, there we go. That should be good. Now we should be good to install our motherboard here again. There we go. Make sure that wire's not under there. One thing that is missing with this, by the way, is the back plate for the motherboard. One disadvantage there of getting a used motherboard. Also a possible disadvantage, it might not work. You never know until we actually get this, there we go. Until we get it fired up. So let's get that lined up there. That looks pretty good. And those are fine thread screws on this one. That is something worth mentioning when doing computers. You usually have 2 different types of screws. And I'm probably not going to be able to show this real well, but we'll see if the camera will focus here. You have typically 2 different types of screws. A fine thread and a coarse thread. In this case, the motherboard is using fine thread. And this is where you're going to have to break out your hammer. And we're going to have the, let's see, this is going to be the Phillips end. So we're going to need the Phillips screwdriver end here, and we're going to be installing these screws. So let's get, usually I like to start off with like a middle one here. And because there's no back plate on this one, usually that kind of helps hold it, but it's not. Install it kind of loose there. Don't want to go too tight right away. And we'll get the rest of the 8 screws in this one in. Definitely don't want to miss any if you can help it. See that on a lot of builds. I don't know why, but people put 2, 3 screws in and then they don't put the remainder. And this will be the last screw here. Got one kind of hiding down right there. Okay, there we go. Screws all installed. Motherboard is securely mounted. It does occur to me I probably should have checked our cooler, see what that is going to require here for mounting. Let's maybe take a look at that here in a moment, because if it requires mounting from underneath, I'm going to have to take this back out again. Classic mistake there. Okay, everyone, so looking at the instructions here for our cooler. This is a Cooler Master cooler here. Do have one issue with that. You might be able to tell what it is. Yes, overall height of this cooler will not fit in this case, unfortunately. So we're going to have to get a slim cooler. I did not take that into calculations there when I got that cooler. That's fine, we'll have to get a slim one. I don't have one on hand though, so we're just going to put this one in for the moment. Looking at the mounting bracket for the Coolmaster Slim one, looks like it's identical. So I could put the mounting hardware for this one in, and then when I get the slim one, just swap this unit out, put the slim one in, and you know, should be good. So anyway, for installing this, reading the directions here, we got the AMD, of course. We got what appears to be our top bracket here. That's this this piece. We got our bottom bracket. This goes underneath the motherboard, and the reason I had to, well, yeah, no, there is no open slot underneath the tray on this case, so I do have to take the motherboard back out, which I've obviously done already. That's what's going to go under the motherboard. So it looks like we need to remove the current brackets here, which appear to be quite tight. What is under here? Is there another? Yeah, there's a mounting plate under there. Which in theory, I suppose we could actually possibly use, I guess. I don't know why we couldn't, actually. Let's just see if this will work here. Oh, no, it probably won't, because it needs, well, maybe it will. It needs to set up. Will it thread in? It will. That's the same thread, right? If you ever want to know if something's the same thread, you just line them up like that, and you should be able to tell they are the same thread. So I see no reason why we can't just leave that bottom bracket under there. In that case, I could have left this in the case. Again, there's a couple different style coolers that'll snap into these as well. So, namely the ones that actually come with the CPU. So a lot of times AMD will include a, let's say a little bit cheaper cooler with their CPUs. It's not great, but saves you some money. And it comes with this little tool here for putting these in. It's actually a little like nut driver with a Phillips head on it. Kind of interesting. Oh, I can use my flathead. Okay, so we're going to use the flathead portion of our hammer here. We'll just screw that down in. Nice and tight. Okay, there we go. And I'll put that tool back away. Obviously the rest of these parts here go with, if you're using this bottom plate here, which I decided not to do. You're actually supposed to put like these nuts and stuff down there. It's like, wow, that just looks like a lot of work there. Having to try to hold the motherboard one side tight. Nah. That's why I decided to leave that bottom bracket there. Makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, so I think we should be good here. Those will stay on. I don't think I quite want to put that cooling tower on here just yet. Again, this is going to be too tall, so we're going to get a slim version. But for the moment, just to get the system up and running, we're going to use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the motherboard back in the case here, seeing as how you see me do that once already. Nothing's changed other than we got these on here now. Okay, everyone, next we're going to install the hard drive here. Again, this is just a spinning platter hard drive. Not necessarily the fastest, or maybe what I would recommend, but it will get the job done. Just a little bit slower. And obviously at a lot cheaper cost too. So just a 500 gig for a system like this, I think that should be more than sufficient. And it looks like for the hard drive, we got a hard drive tray right here. I'm kind of curious, I don't see like a mounting option for, unless it's maybe down here somewhere, like if you had an actual SSD. Typically the SSDs come in a smaller form factor, so not actually sure where you'd actually put the SSD in this one. And the hard drive here takes the Corsair threaded screws here. I'll just tighten those down. And then there's two on the other side too. I'll just get those off camera here. Next, I think we'll probably do the power supply. Now, one thing I noticed, there is a lot of wires in this case. I just got to say, there's a lot of wires. So this is, yeah, a lot of wires. Okay, for the power supply here, we have a Corsair 500 watt power supply. It's a Corsair CX500M there. It is a semi-modular power supply, meaning the only wires that are actually connected to it, i.e. that you cannot take off, are the two for the motherboard. So you got your big 24 pin, and then it has a 8 pin. Interestingly enough, this 8 pin doesn't, oh, maybe it can be separated. Yeah, maybe you can actually separate this pin. Obviously, some lower end motherboards might still take just 4 pins instead of 8. This motherboard does take 8, so that is actually a good sign. It's a little bit beefier motherboard. And for the power supply install here, we're going to be mounting with a fan facing down. This is the top of the case here, by the way. A lot of cases now you see it with the power supply mounted at the bottom. This one is at the top yet. And this as well should use the Corsair threaded screws, of which there are 4 of them. If we have enough screws anyway. Ah, there we go. Starting to run out of Corsair thread screws here. And for this here, we got one there, and then there is one here. Okay, power supply installed. At this point, I believe we need to start hooking up all these wires. Well, let's see if we can manage some of the cables here. I'm going to start with the 8-pin for the motherboard here. Now, if you notice, there is a hole up here that is probably what that is supposed to go for, but you cannot fit this through that hole, so that's kind of unfortunate. Otherwise, that'd make a great spot to kind of hide it away at, but unfortunately, that is not going to work, so we're going to have to put it in there. Next, the big motherboard connection here. Comes with a big 24-pin. Don't know why they really need so many wires on there, but hey, whatever, I guess. Snap in, there we go. And then one for the hard drive. Well, here's the cables that all need to connect to the motherboard here for the various front I/O and power switches. Like I said, we got audio, USB, USB 3.0, and then we got 4 of these, of which there is a power switch, hard drive LED, power LED, and a reset switch. I'm not even sure where the reset switch actually, oh, probably the little one up top. Okay. So those, again, being used, I don't even have a book for this. The individual that I got this motherboard from sent absolutely nothing with it. So typically, you know, if you get a brand new motherboard, you'll have a book. It'll kind of show you where these need to connect in. We're just gonna, it's labeled on the motherboard as well, so you shouldn't have any trouble. We're gonna do the best we can with that. Also, typically, you know, when you get a motherboard, it'll also include all the cables you need, such as SATA cable for your hard drives and anything else. Obviously, again, didn't get that. That's just fine. I've got plenty of these laying around from the previous motherboard, so not an issue for me, but something you may want to keep in mind if you want to try to go this route. So let's start off with these small annoying wires here first. Let's get these big ones out of here. Try to kind of sort these out just a little bit here. And down here we got hard drive LED, plus and minus. Does it say which end is plus? I'm just going to assume the side that's labeled plus is plus. Down right there. Next we have power LED plus and minus above it. I don't know why they always separate these, but they do. It's kind of annoying. Plus is on that side, looks like it says. And then we got reset and power. Oh, right next to each other. Well, that makes it easy. So I got power. Which one do we want to do first? I probably should do the reset first because it's back behind there. So reset switch. Not aware it matters which way these go in. Okay, that takes care of those wires. And we do have a fan back in here, so we'll have to kind of zip tie these up just to keep them up out of the way a little better. I'll worry about that probably off camera. Okay, USB. That is that one. These usually have one pin missing, so you can't plug them in wrong. In theory. USB 3.0, it's got a notch on it, so again, you shouldn't be able to plug that in wrong. And then we have audio, which is, looks like that one way over there. Again, missing one on this one. The one that's missing on audio, however, is different than the one that's missing on the USB. So you can't plug the audio one into the USB one. There we go. Does it for all those. And then finally, let's get a SATA cable here for the hard drive. Which one is which? That's the question. I'm going to guess the bottom one is 0, it looks like. And we'll plug that into the hard drive. Yeah, and some extra long cables. I don't know why they have to have such long cables here on a small case. I mean, it's not like the motherboard's going anywhere far here. Well, after a little cable management, or at least trying to do a little cable management later, got the case somewhat cleaned up of wires there, we're on to what is arguably the most important part of any gaming PC, and that is the graphics card. In this case, again, an AMD R7 270. Not, you know, a very big card, but it should get the job done at a, again, somewhat reasonable price point, hopefully. So it is a double-decker card, if that's a thing, I guess. But MSI, not a terrible looking card. I don't think this one takes any additional power. Typically your smaller ones don't, so I don't see any additional power pins. Obviously a lot of your bigger graphics cards, you know, additional 6 or even 8 pin. So this is going to take up 2 slots here, which we got to break out. I don't like that on these new cases. They make breakout slots. Nice in some ways, but if you break out the wrong one, or you know, maybe you make changes to your case later, you can't exactly put these back in. And might as well just take these off too. So it has DVI, HDMI, and DisplayPort. So one of each. Now we're gonna have to take that back cover off here. And just push it in. There's a lock on this one here. It should be down. So we're just going to push the graphics card in. A little lock and clip there. You probably can't quite see it on the camera. Locks down. And I'm assuming what is probably coarse thread screws in here, I think. Let's find out. Okay, there we go. I do believe we are pretty much done here. We just need to put the CPU cooler on at this point, and then it'll be part 2 here. We're going to install Windows in. So for those of you who have not seen that part before, it seems like a lot of things, or something that is not very commonly shown. Oh, we're going to have to, let's see what's here. That fan is going to plug in there. Set that down in there. Hopefully that'll clear everything. Oh, it's going to be fun getting those screws in, isn't it? Where did I put my bracket here? There we go. The bracket here comes in several different configurations. Again, depending on what cooler you have, you're going to have to figure that out. So, wait a minute here. So we're going to have to go in like so, I believe, and then spread them out. And of course we do need some thermal paste on here. This does not come pre-applied. And it does actually come with some, but rather than opening up what they have, I'm just going to use some I have that's already open here, which is some Arctic Silver 5, which is probably better than what's in here anyway. We're just going to kind of smear that all on there. Don't need much, just get a kind of a nice even coating as you possibly can here. Okay, we got some thermal paste applied to the bottom of the cooler here. Try to gently lower it down in there. Set it down on the CPU there. Yeah, really can't see in here. Okay. Okay, everyone, there we go. System is fully built. You'll have to come back for next episode. We'll fire it up. And like I said, it'll be installing Windows on it. Not something you see most builders doing. They just do the build and then you don't see the Windows being installed. Probably because most builders will have a pre-installed hard drive. They just slip in and out of various cases they build. But in this case, obviously, brand new system. So we got Windows, it'll be Windows 10 here, Windows 10 Home Edition. And obviously I cannot put the front case cover on at this point because, get it the right way here. Yeah, cooler there. It's about ½ inch too tall. So close, but not quite. So like I said, we got a slim version of this coming. It basically just takes it and rotates it 90, so it's laying flat in there. I don't know, maybe not quite as good a cooling performance that way. About the same, I would think, but maybe not. Obviously on the back here, missing the I/O shield there. That's kind of too bad, but oh well. So anyway, again, big thanks to the individuals that donated to make this system happen here, and we do plan on doing a giveaway for it. After we do some playing around with it here, we'll probably be testing out, seeing how well it'll play some games here. So yeah, if folks have any comments or questions, be sure to leave them below. And as always, thanks for watching, and until next time.